Hi, so in this video I'm gonna show you we're getting started with the Raspberry Pi Pico here from the Raspberry Pi Foundation. So this is kind of interesting. Basically what it does is we program it with the MicroPython. You said Raspberry Pi Pico with a MicroPython, and this is a low cost device. I bought it around, which is quite cheap, 20 ringgit in Malaysia, which is equivalent for $5. Here is the way we connect the Raspberry Pi Pico to your computer. Just install the Thonny Python IDE. So what it does is the IDE that used is Thonny Python, and write the MicroPython program just to blink the onboard LED. Then we're gonna try out some examples. Just follow this getting started with Raspberry Pi Pico. Then you can see here got few contents: intro, meet Raspberry Pi Pico, install Thonny, MicroPython firmware, using the shell, blink the onboard LED. Then you got digital input, we can control LED brightness with pulse width modulation, control an LED with an analog input. Then we can power up the Raspberry Pi Pico. We go one by one. So we say one by one through this Raspberry Pi getting started Raspberry Pi website. So what we need is this hardware, which is of course the Raspberry Pi Pico, and run with the Thonny IDE, a micro USB cable, which is a smaller one version for the USB. Selection electronic components such as button and LED will be appropriate as the resistor. A breadboard, which I'm using right now, external 5-volt micro USB, right? And this guide will basically what the guide through lah. What you learn is how to load MicroPython firmware into Raspberry Pi Pico, program it, and then got some additional component. Okay, let's go one by one from the content. Meet Raspberry Pi Pico. So they say this is a Raspberry Pi Pico. Hopefully your device has already have the header pin soldered on. If don't have, we have to solder ourselves. They will provide this, which is the Raspberry Pi Pico, and they got a header pin as well, so we just have to solder it. But in case if pre-solder is much easier for light, put on the breadboard just like this. It's quite nice. And the way we have to plug micro USB cable into the port on the left side of the port. Then no pin numbers for Raspberry Pi Pico. The totals of Raspberry Pi Pico totals got 40 pins, as according to the diagram here, which is quite interesting. And the next part, let's say we go to the content tree, which is the install Thonny. So what you can see in this step, you will install Thonny. Make sure you connect the Raspberry Pi and run a simple Python using this Thonny IDE. Basically it's like an IDE for embedded device for the Python language in an embedded device. So Thonny basically is an integrated development environment for Python designed for beginner. Yeah, I'm designed for beginner, which is integrated development, like embedded type in Python, using a Python language, Thonny IDE. So you can see you just can run the print and hello world here. To install the Thonny, you already installed it. Let's say here's the details you can go through, which I have provide all the links for this one getting started with Raspberry Pi Pico on the link below. Then we get the add MicroPython firmware. Find the boot cell button on the Raspberry Pi Pico. Press the boot cell while we're plugging in the USB at the same time to the computer lah. Okay, let's go through this. Install Thonny on my desktop, which is I'm using Windows in this case. So I'm just gonna launch this Thonny. Let's see how it goes. Let's also plug in this for Raspberry Pi Pico. Right now in MicroPython detected Raspberry Pi Pico on COM4, which is common serial communication 4, port 4 for the Raspberry Pi Pico right now. Okay, I'm just gonna straight away copy this which one, just to light up test the code and light up through the Raspberry Pi Pico. From machine, import pin LED pin 25 as the output pin. Then we'll set the LED value as high. I will run this straight away. You can see our Raspberry Pi Pico is right now light up. Onboard LED is light up here. Okay, let's try out some other code here. What else you can do? We turn it at 0, LED value 0, so it kind of turn off the LED. Okay, next we gonna do is pin out timer. Okay, this one is for machine import pin timer for, let's say we blink the LED. For machine prompt timer, set as timer function here. LED pin 25 is out, so we can make it blinky for our onboard Raspberry Pi Pico. Okay, just gonna test this. I'm gonna run it. So right now you can see my Raspberry Pi Pico, and yeah, there's kind of blinky here. Let's do other things. Let's see what we can do. Use digital input and output. Next, content. Okay, this is what this we use an LED, use outside LED. In terms of here, I kind of have one LED to show it up here, and then let's blink an outside LED. We set pin 15 for the LED to blink for machine import, and set a timer here. And let's see, we can blink an external using pin 15. We blink an external blinky for the external LED for the next one here. Okay, this time we add an push button for it. Let's see what it does. This time we use like a while true loop for show it is true. Then we kind of just say it, run the script. We stop first, then we run the script. Okay, we got an indenting error. So what it does here, we just gonna do this here, on and off. Okay, quickly let's start with now is we kind of control it, the trim port. So for machine import pin PWM ADC analog digital converter, PWM set as pin 15 here, ADC pin 26, PWM frequency is around 1000. And then while true loop we got duty ADC read, which is U16, then PWM duty U16 for duty. So let's see here how it goes when we run this code. So this is what it does. When I run this code, it's like this. You can control it to PWM. Kind of find this, which is quite nice. Yeah. See. Okay, guys, that's kind of it. Just quick, which is kind of getting started with Raspberry Pi Pico. Everything is in the site of the official website from the Raspberry Pi. You can have a look on it, play with it, and see how it goes, how you enjoy it. And if getting serious more, maybe you can go through the Raspberry Pi microcontroller and actively involve it with the PCB design. It's something much interesting stuff to do for the future content. And yeah guys, that's about it. Hope you like this video. Hope you enjoy. See you next time.